Ulduar is an ancient Titan facility designed to protect the planet of Azeroth from the corruption of the old gods. Located in the storm peaks of Northrend, Ulduar has been largely undisturbed by the mortal races over the past few millennia. Now, this may seem like overkill, but in order to fully explain the ongoings of this titanic construct, we must first explain the start of the universe. Background: Titans and Voidlords. The World of Warcraft universe is largely governed by the Titan Pantheon of Order. The members of the Pantheon are Aman'Thul, Eonar, Norgannon, Golganeth, Khaz'Goroth, Agramar, and of course, Sargeras. Initially, Aman'Thul alone woke. He noted that if he came into existence, others like him may exist as well, so he took to searching. He found world souls, vulnerable infant-stage titans that exist within some planets. He nurtured them until they too awoke and joined his cause. The Pantheon was formed. Their goal became to shape and protect the worlds of the universe while they search for other world souls. Protect from what, you may ask? The Voidlords. As the name entails, Voidlords rule over the Void, a space that exists outside of physical reality. Their ultimate goal is to twist and consume reality until all is within their domain of nothingness. Now, Voidlords have a distinct problem in achieving this goal. They generally can't manifest in the realm of reality, and when they do, they are greatly weakened. Also, these manifestations are temporary because in time their physical form fades again into nothingness. So here the Pantheon doesn't really have much to worry about. They recognize the Voidlords can't meaningfully cross into reality, and nothing in known reality is as strong as a Titan. However, the Voidlords recognize this as well. The Voidlords tried turning Titans to their side with insidious whispers and corruptive magics. The Titans of the Pantheon were unaffected by these attempts. The Voidlords then employed Plan B. They spewed parasitic matter across reality with hopes of finding and corrupting a world soul. This matter took the form of horrific monstrosities that are deemed old gods. In time, the Pantheon, minus Sargeras, discovers primordial Azeroth, a sleeping world soul, and the planet that the majority of the Warcraft story takes place on. The good news was that this world soul was massive, the biggest and strongest would-be Titan the Pantheon had ever seen. The bad news, the old gods had reached this planet first, and had already begun sowing the seeds of their corruption. These old gods were titled Y'Shaarj, C'Thun, Yogg-Saron, and N'Zoth. They had enslaved the world's native elemental lords and created a terrorscape known as the Black Empire. Agramar and Eonar convinced the rest of the Pantheon to purge the old gods from Azeroth in an attempt to save the sleeping Titan. The Titans found that due to their size and power, they could hardly take action without risking collateral damage to the world soul, so they called upon Khaz'Goroth to create the Titan Forged, which would battle the old gods in their stead. The Great Forger created the Aesir of metal and the Vanir of stone. These mighty Titan Forge managed to defeat the Elemental Lords, Aekir, and Inkir armies. Unfortunately, they were unable to defeat the strongest of the old gods, Y'Shaarj. In response to this, Aman'Thul himself grabbed Y'Shaarj and ripped him from the planet. Doing so opened a wound in Azeroth where arcane energy, the world soul's lifeblood, spilled forth. Apparently, the old gods had managed to intertwine themselves with the world soul in such a way that damaging them would damage Azeroth. The Pantheon had no choice but to imprison the remaining 3 old gods. They proceeded to bring order to the world of Azeroth. Titan Forged and the Ordering of Azeroth. The Titans created many constructs of various purposes to assist in bringing order to the ravaged world. They had previously created the Aesir and Vanir Watchers to destroy the armies of the old gods and seal them away. Specific Watchers were selected by the Pantheon to become Titan-empowered Keepers. The Keepers were each given a portion of a Titan soul. These are the main characters of the story of Ulduar. The 9 Titan Keepers are the following. Arcadus, empowered by Khaz'Goroth, the Shaper and Forger of Worlds. Loken and Mimiron, empowered by Norgannon, holder of the celestial magics and lore. Thorim and Hodir, empowered by Golganeth, lord of the skies and the roaring oceans. Freya, empowered by Eonar, the Lifebinder. Tyr, empowered by Agramar, the Avenger. Highkeeper Ra and Prime Designate Odin, empowered by Aman'Thul, the High Father. The Keepers acted on behalf of the Pantheon and accomplished tasks on the planet's surface that the Titans could not. During the ordering of Azeroth, the Keepers built facilities to bring stability to the planet. N'Zoth was the first Old God to be imprisoned. He was sequestered to an underground cell between the site where Yogg-Saron was killed and the future site of the Titan facility Ulduar. Ulduar was a vault designed to lock away Titan relics, including the failed Titan Forge race known as Trogs. This site comes to house the Discs of Norgannon. These discs were created by Loken and Mimiron and details a full history of Azeroth. Arcadis ends up as its guardian alongside the Watcher Aronia. In the far south, Uldum was established by Ra, who equipped it with the Forge of Origination. Created by Mimiron and Arcadis, the Forge of Origination was designed to regulate and fortify the World Soul's form. The Forge of Origination was also capable of killing everything on the planet in the case the Old God's corruption grew out of control. After Ra had established Uldum, he moved to create Ahn'Qiraj. Ahn'Qiraj was a Titan research facility that also served as a prison of Cthulhu. Both facilities were protected by Ra alongside the Titan Forge Tol'vir, Anubisath, and Mogu. Ra eventually abandons both sites. Ulduar was a research facility that the Keepers used to study the Old Gods through dissection and experimentation. They inadvertently created an artificial fifth Old God named G'huun, and they were forced to seal it within the facility. Now we can finally speak about the biggest, most important Titan facility of Ulduar. Situated in the far north, Ulduar served as the prison for Yogg-Saron. The site also housed the Forge of Wills, Halls of Stone, the Halls of Lightning, and temporarily the Halls of Valor. The Forge of Wills was a counterpart to the Forge of Origination. It regulated Azeroth's sentience and allowed for the creation of the various Titan Forge races. The protection and operation of Ulduar were the responsibilities of Freya, Hodir, Mimiron, Odin, Thorim, and Loken. With the ordering of Azeroth complete, the Pantheon took their leave of the planet to continue searching for more world souls. They placed a celestial being, Algalon the Observer, in charge of watching the planet. Algalon could be summoned to the service of Azeroth in two ways: if he was contacted by a specific machine in Ulduar, or if the Prime Designate was killed. In the case that he is summoned to Azeroth, he performs a scan of the planet searching for Old God corruption. If systemic corruption is found, he will activate the Forge of Origination by transmitting reply code Omega. If no corruption was present, he would instead transmit reply code Alpha. Odin's departure. Even after the ordering of Azeroth, there were still many threats to the planet's stability. One such threat came in the form of Isildur, a giant blue serpent. Odin watched as a Titan Forge Vrykul battled and defeated the serpent, commending their bravery and tenacity. Galakrond, a gigantic protodrake with necromantic powers, posed another threat. He was defeated by 5 smaller protodrakes with the help of Tyr. Tyr lost his hand in this battle and had it replaced with one of pure silver. The other Keepers and the Pantheon deemed these 5 protodrakes worthy of empowerment as protectors of Azeroth. This decision upset Odin, who believed the Vrykul were more suited for the job. Odin turned his back on his fellow Keepers and decided he would empower the Vrykul himself. He had his adoptive daughter, the Watcher Helya, lift his Halls of Valor from Ulduar and place them in the sky. There Odin took his seat and forcibly twisted Helya into the first Titan forged Valkyr. Valkyr possessed the power to escort worthy souls from the Shadowlands to the Halls of Valor and can raise Vrykul into chosen guardians named Valarjar. For millennia, Helya resented Odin for doing this to her. Loken's betrayal. There were 5 remaining Keepers in Ulduar: Mimiron, Freya, Hodir, Thorim, and Loken. With Odin gone, the role of Prime Designate is taken by Loken. He becomes the operator of the Forge of Wills as well as the chief jailer of Yogg-Saron, leaving him most open to the Old God's insidious whispers. In time, Loken has an affair with Thorim's wife, Sif. Yogg-Saron took this opportunity to mess with Loken's mind, confusing and muddling the Keeper's thoughts. Sif knew that their affair threatened the unity of the Keepers, and tried to call it off. Loken feared what would happen if he lost her affection and struck out. His thoughts cleared, and he realized he had accidentally killed Sif. Fearful of letting the truth get out, Loken convinced Thorim that Sif had been murdered by the Titan-forged Ice Giant King, Angrim the Insatiable. Fueled by his rage, Thorin turned on his former allies and threw his hammer at Angrim and the Ice Giants. The hammer instantly froze everyone and everything in the area now known as Thunderfall. This event started a war between the Ice Giants, also known as the Sons of Hodir, and Thorim's Storm Giants. Loken used the Forge of Wills to create an army to help stop the fighting. Unbeknownst to him, however, Yogg-Saron had corrupted the Forge with the Curse of Flesh. Over time, the Curse of Flesh transformed the Titan Forged stone and metallic bodies into soft, weak flesh. It would spread across the land and eventually give rise to many races we know today. After the fighting had stopped, Thorin secluded himself to his seat in the Storm Peaks called the Temple of Storms. Loken still needed to cover his lies, and was fully willing to give in to Yogg-Saron's power to do so. He simply couldn't risk the Keepers, Algalon, or the Pantheon learning of his crimes, for they would certainly kill him. First, he had to deal with Odin and his Valarjar army in the Halls of Valor. Loken met with Helya and asked her to seal off the halls, imprisoning Odin there. Helya agreed, and went so far as to spitefully create her own afterlife realm of Helheim. There, she would drag the souls of Vrykul warriors to ensure they could never reach Odin's Hall. By now, Loken had fully succumbed to Yogg-Saron's will. Mimiron had grown curious of the fleshy abnormalities within the new Titan Forge and started to investigate. Loken couldn't risk this, and he had Mimiron killed. Mimiron's Mechanome followers were able to place him in the body of a Mechanome, saving his life but costing him his sanity. Then, Loken and Yogg-Saron battled Freya, defeating her and leaving her subdued in the halls of Ulduar. While this happened, Loken had two fire giants, Vulcan and Ignis, wage war against Hodir. After they had weakened the Keeper, Loken himself arrived to subdue him. Now the only Keepers remaining were those outside of Ulduar. Loken knew Ra was in the far south, near Ahn'Qiraj and Uldum, but Ra never investigated Loken's deeds. Instead, he had locked himself inside the Mogushan vaults after he alone learned the Pantheon had been destroyed. Still, Tyr and Arcadis remained, and they had grown aware of what Loken and Yogg-Saron were capable of. Tyr managed to distract Loken while Arcadis stole the discs of Narganin, a record of Loken's deeds. Tyr, Arcadis, and the Watcher Ironia fled from Ulduar alongside some Earthen, Vrykul, and Mechanomes. They were pursued by two Cathraxi, monstrous servants for the old gods. These were Zakaj and Kithix. It was here that Tyr sacrificed himself to fight the Cathraxi while his companions escaped. Tyr battled the Cathraxi for days before he gathered his arcane energy and self-destructed. This killed Zakaj and deeply wounded Kithix, preventing any further pursuit. Arcadis and Ironia eventually made it to the safety of Uldaman with the discs. Loken was worried about the truth that the discs contained, so he created the Tribunal of Ages and filled it with a fake retelling of events to hide his crimes. Furthermore, Loken destroyed the device to summon Algalon. This made it so Algalon could only be contacted if Loken, the Prime Designate, were killed. At this point, Yogg-Saron pretty much single-handedly defeated the Keepers of Azeroth, all while imprisoned. However, keeping the Keepers dormant and subdued was about all the old god could muster. After millennia, Cho'Gall and the Twilight's Hammer cult managed to weaken Yogg-Saron's imprisonment, allowing for him to take greater effect. He drove Loken to create bloodthirsty armies of Iron Dwarves and Vrykul using the Forge of Wills. Adventurers and the Dungeons of Ulduar. To put it lightly, things were getting out of hand in Northrend. The Drukhari trolls were stealing the powers of their gods. The aspect of the blue dragonflight was attempting to drain all arcane energy from the planet, and Arthas, the Lich King, was primed to wage war on all of Azeroth with his Scourge army. Soldiers and adventurers of Azeroth's mortal races joined forces to combat the world-threatening problems in the north. Around this time, Thorim finally recognizes he had been deceived by Loken and challenges him. Thorim and his proto-drake mount, Varanus, battle Loken. However, Loken, with the help of Yogg-Saron's influence, defeats Thorim and brings both him and his mount into Ulduar, subdued by the old god. Adventurers enter the Halls of Stone. There they assist Bran Bronzebeard in accessing the Tribunal of Ages, which we know is a false record of history installed by Loken. They also combat the Maiden of Grief, a watcher who is grieving due to her inability to resist Loken's evil commands. Adventurers then battle Crystallis, a stone giant who was forged to protect the Halls of Stone. Finally, adventurers find what Loken was trying to protect, the Forge of Wills. Of course, this was where the Titan Forge were made, and also where the Curse of Flesh originated. It was currently being used to generate the bloodthirsty armies of Loken, so adventurers had to disable it. But to do so, they would have to combat Sjonir, the Iron Shaper. The Forge's master willingly turned to their new dark purpose, but was eventually felled by the adventurers. Adventurers then entered the Halls of Lightning on the eastern side of Ulduar to find Loken himself. Before they could challenge him, however, they would first have to combat his underlings. First is General Bjarngrim, the leader of all Iron Vrykul under Loken's command. Next is Volkan, the fire giant who had served Loken during the battles against Hodir. Vulcan had also battled Tyr, Arcadius, and Ironia. He, alongside Ignis, witnessed firsthand the effects the Curse of Flesh had on his army of constructs, giants, enslaved Vrykul, and protodrakes. Now he serves Loken by constructing golems at the Crucible. After this, they face the lightning elemental Ionar, not to be confused with the titan Aonar. Ionar guards Loken without question, but falls to the adventurers. Finally, it is time for adventurers to face the traitorous Titan Keeper Loken. In the Adventure Guide, it is said, "None could have foreseen that the Keeper entrusted to safeguard this world from the old god's malevolence would be the one responsible for its undoing." As adventurers defeat Loken, he claims, "My death heralds the end of the world," for he knew that his death as Prime Designate would summon Algalon. After the planetary scan, Algalon would find Yogg-Saron's corruption, transmit Reply Code Omega, and activate the Forge of Origination, ending life on Azeroth. Ideally, this doesn't happen, so adventurers must launch a raid on Ulduar proper. With Loken dead, everyone and everything in Ulduar, with the exception of Algalon, directly serves Yogg-Saron's will. The Raid of Ulduar. First, adventurers must storm the gates of Ulduar and face the Flame Leviathan, an armored tank designed by the Keeper Mimiron. After the tank is destroyed and the gates breached, adventurers come across a flame giant, Ignis the Furnace Maker. As mentioned before, he served with Volkan against Hodir. Loken called upon the Furnace Maker to create two of the later bosses in Ulduar. The first boss Loken had Ignis create is Razor Scale. This twisted dragon was once Varanus, the broodmother of the proto-drakes in Storm Peaks. After Varanus was captured by Loken, she was modified by Ignis and forced to serve their evil master. The next encounter is a construct created by Mimiron, the XT-002 Deconstructor. XT was tasked with patrolling the scrapyard of Ulduar. Mimiron chose to provide XT with the intellect of a child, causing the construct to view the Keeper as its father and giving it a tendency to throw tantrums. With those four defeated, adventurers will travel deeper into Ulduar, entering the antechamber of the complex. First in the antechamber is the Assembly of Iron. These three generals represent three Titan Forge races: Steelbreaker with the Giants, Runemaster Mulgheim with the Vrykul, and Stormcaller Brundir with the Earthen. All serve Yogg-Saron. Proceeding further, the adventurers will pass by the Celestial Planetarium, where Algalon will arrive when summoned. Adventurers then reach a destroyed bridge that prevents them from delving further into the complex. Here, in the Shattered Walkway, they face the colossal Kologarn. Kologarn was the second boss created by Ignis the Furnace Master. Kologarn was designed to obliterate anyone attempting to access the depths of Ulduar, but ironically, his body will serve as a replacement walkway after his defeat. Aurea is a watcher tasked with archiving the ongoings of Ulduar. Her solitude and the influence of the old god has destroyed her sanity. She patrols the observation ring with her cats. Adventurers now enter the domains of the Keepers. Here the Keepers sat for millennia, but adventurers can continue their stories. The observation ring branches off in 5 directions. The first is the Halls of Winter, where Hodir waits in his icy cavern. He once lent his guidance to the ice giants of Storm Peaks, but was subdued by Loken and controlled by Yogg-Saron. Adventurers are able to defeat him and free him of the old god's control. Next is the Clash of Thunder, where Thorm sits, placated by Yogg-Saron's illusory Seif. Adventurers are able to defeat Thorm, dispel the illusion, and free him from Yogg-Saron's control. The Conservatory of Life is where Freya and her elder assistants are. In her lush gardens, the adventurers combat them and are able to free her from Yogg-Saron's control as well. Mimiron's Spark of Ingenuity is next. Adventurers combat his various inventions of war and destruction, including a second version of the Leviathan tank. After adventurers disable these inventions, Mimiron too is freed from Yogg's control. The four freed keepers are weakened from their battles, but they still offer their assistance to the adventurers. Finally, they enter the Hall of Memories, where Loken once protected the realm from the imprisoned Yogg-Saron. Adventurers must battle Twilight's Hammer cultists and Faceless Ones to reach the Old God. One of these Faceless Ones is General Vezax, a Cathraxi. Upon his defeat, adventurers enter the prison of Yogg-Saron and come face to face with Sarah, a Vrykul woman. She instructs the adventurers to focus their assault on Yogg-Saron's minions. Clever adventurers see past the deception and use exploded minions to damage Sarah, dispelling the illusion and revealing her to be the Valkyr avatar of Yogg-Saron, and further revealing Yogg-Saron himself. The battle with Yogg-Saron is a multifaceted one. Adventurers have to fight Yogg-Saron's physical form, as well as entering his mind and battling inside the Old God's thoughts. All the while, Yogg-Saron attacks the sanity of the adventurers. Should adventurers succeed, Yogg-Saron will be defeated, but the world still isn't safe. Algalon the Observer arrives at the Celestial Planetarium and begins his scan of the planet. Adventurers are forced to take action in order to stop him from transmitting Relay Code Omega and activating the Forge of Origination. Through his defeat, Algalon concludes life should not be originated, despite the Old God corruption. He surrenders the Relay Code Alpha to the adventurers. Should they transmit the code from a place of power in the skies, such as Dalaran, the origination process will be stopped, and the world will finally be safe from the threats within Ulduar. Notes and related events. I decided to summarize some rather significant events here since they don't directly relate to Ulduar. Sargeras once found a World Soul that was almost fully corrupted by the Void Lords. He destroyed the World Soul, a decision that the rest of the Pantheon reprimanded him for. Sargeras left the Pantheon and created the Burning Legion with the goal of ridding the universe of life. He had concluded that a lifeless universe was preferable to one controlled by the Void. Y'Shaarj being ripped out of Azeroth created the Well of Eternity. Remains from the Old God's body fell back to the planet, creating the Sha. The Old God's heart was sealed in the Veil of Eternal Blossoms in Pandaria. During the Ordering of Azeroth, specific keepers defeated specific elemental lords. The matchups were Odin and Tyr versus Ragnaros, Loken and Mimiron versus Neptulon, Arcadis and Freya versus Therazane, and Thorim, Hodir, and Ra versus Alakir. Similar to the Keepers, each dragon aspect was empowered by a different member of the Pantheon. Through Ra, Amenthul empowered the bronze dragon Norzdomu as the protector of time. Through Freya, Eonar empowered both the red dragon Alexstrasza and the green dragon Ysera as the Lifebinder and the Warden of Nature, respectively. Alexstrasza and Eonar share the same title of Lifebinder. Through Loken, Narganon empowered the blue dragon Malygos as a guardian of magic and knowledge. And through Arcadis, Khaz'goroth empowered the black dragon Neltharion as a protector of the deep earth. World trees are giant ancient trees connected to a realm called the Emerald Dream. The Emerald Dream, created by Freya and governed by Ysera, is a spiritual realm that represents a natural ideal state of Azeroth. Roots from the world tree Andrasil, now called Voldrasil, grew too close to Yogg-Saron's prison, allowing him to corrupt the Emerald Dream and thereby creating the Emerald Nightmare. The place where Tyr died was called Tyr's Fall, which would morph into the name Trisfall Glades. His silver hand marked the site of his grave. This inspired the names of the Paladin Order Knights of the Silver Hand and the Scarlet Crusader city of Tyr's Hand. Kithix, the Cathraxi survivor of Tyr's self-destruction, fell into slumber in the Zandalar Mountains. Loa in the area would bury him and forbid disturbing the area. He would later be awakened by a Zandalar troll and the sentient dagger Xal'atath. This would start the Troll-Aqir War. Odin traded his eye to Mazala, the Loa of Death, to be able to see into the Shadowlands. After looking into the Shadowlands, he saw the Kyrian, which inspired his creation of the Valkyr. Odin's eye was delivered to Zoval, the jailer, and was transformed into the eye of the jailer. Ra's seclusion was caused when he learned the Pantheon's physical forms were killed by Sargeras. He didn't know that the Pantheon lived in spirit form and had even tried to inhabit the bodies of the Keepers. This failed, though, so the Pantheon only lived on in spirit form. The player battleground strand of the Ancients occurs at a Titan facility named Ulduar. The Dragonflight expansion has a zone named Tierhold, which is a Titan facility named Ulduar. Serenite, or the black blood of Yogg-Saron, is a mineral found in Northrend and has been rumored to cause violent insanity in those exposed to it for long periods of time. The Scourge heavily mined this ore, and many of the Lich King's structures are made from it, including Icecrown Citadel. Adventurers have even heard the zombified Scourge hatefully speaking the name Yogg-Saron. Outro. You know, when I started this video, I definitely underestimated how much there was to say. It seems like almost every story in Warcraft can be connected to Ulduar in some way or another. Even so, I tried to be relatively brief since I wanted to get this done before Ulduar came out on Wrath Classic. For more information, I definitely recommend reading World of Warcraft Chronicle Volume 1 by Chris Metzen, Matt Burns, and Robert Brooks. If you're wondering why my voice gets worn out, I had to take a bunch of takes since everything is so hard to pronounce, like Yisharaj, Cathraxi, Discs of Norganon. But yeah, I mean, that's all. Thanks for watching.